Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fortified Life podcast, where we are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus and the marketplace. I'm your host, Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify. Every week, we have the opportunity to bring on authors, speakers, coaches, leaders of nonprofits who are also passionate about putting God back in business, and it's no different this week. Folks, I'm really excited for our guest. Let me tell you a little bit more about her. Ebony James is the CEO of the Empire Effect Agency, a powerhouse operations professional for online service providers, nonprofit founders, and consultants. Known as the secret weapon behind thriving, mission-driven businesses, Ebony helps leaders master their time, amplify their impact, and increase revenue without the overwhelm. With expertise in operations management and counseling, executive assistance, online business management, and customer service experience optimization, Ebony brings over 13 plus years of experience and has a unique hands-on approach to helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses effectively. As a Christian, wife, mother of three, and a full-time entrepreneur, Ebony deeply understands the power of stewardship and delegation. Her personal journey fuels her passion for helping other leaders find balance, building impactful and profitable businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fortified Life, Ebony James. Ebony, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited. Just the purpose around the podcast and what you're here to do. I'm excited. I am excited.
Yes.
It's an honor.
I'm excited as well, Ebony. And for the listeners out there, we actually have a mutual contact. One of the guests on the show, Nautri, actually said, "Hey, Jason, I think Ebony would be a great guest on the show." So that's just for the audience, a little fun fact. As I was telling Ebony offline, when you're around great people, you tend to recommend other great people. So that's just a little nugget of how we met. But Ebony, you're so right. This is a powerful conversation about bringing together faith and business. Ebony, when we think about your bio, there's a lot: online business, consulting. God has graced you to do many things. Take us on the journey a little bit. We know you didn't just wake up in 2026 and boom, here you are. So talk to us about your professional journey.
Yeah, if I can go back to undergrad, I
Hmm.
actually started school for sociology and social work. Yes, so I was committed to be like a person who was in the ministry of helps. So I was like, it didn't matter how much money I made, I just want to help people. And so I went to school and I got my bachelor's degree in sociology with a social work concentration. And then I got heavily into ministry after I graduated undergrad and I got married, began to have children, but then the Lord put me back into school. And so I received my master's in social work and a concentration in applied behavior analysis. And so that's just all trying to figure out how people behave, why they behave the way they behave, and how to change behavior. And then I also have a master's in curriculum and instruction. And so after school, I actually was in a classroom for 5 years and I taught special education for kindergarten for K through 8, mostly in middle school. So sixth through eighth grade, I was in the special education classroom supporting students. And it wasn't until I was in ministry and I realized that there was a such thing as this gift of administration. Up until
Hmm.
this point, I had never heard of that. I was just organized. That's what I would tell people. I was in a ministry after college and they were like, man, you're so administrative. And I was just like, why does everyone keep saying that? And I started looking deeper into it because my mom, my dad, they're very organized people. My dad is very entrepreneurial, they're business savvy. And so I'm thinking like, oh, my mom is this way, my dad is this way. And when I started looking into this gift, I realized, no, this is something that the Lord gives, you know? And so I started using the gift. So I remember the pastor and his wife, they asked me, they was like, hey, can you be the executive assistant to the church? And I was like, sure, whatever that means. I'm on a path to be a social worker. And they asked me to be an executive assistant. So I was supporting with planning conferences and events. I was doing the behind the scenes administration of the church and the nonprofit. And from there, the Lord just took me on this process. So I'm learning about this gift of administration while also in ministry school and going through this process of consecration, this process of really just honing in with my relationship with God. And as He's strengthening this relationship, He keeps bringing on this idea of use your gift of administration. And
Mm.
so I ended up eventually going into these mentorship programs, and administration just keeps coming up. And so I started to be a virtual assistant. And so I started as a virtual assistant and I was supporting ministry leaders, again, nonprofit founders, and I was just supporting everyone in their ministries. And I started off just doing it for free because I thought this was just a gift that I was supposed to use. Never had heard anyone talk about marketplace ministry. Never heard anyone talk about that. I grew up in the church. I grew up Kojic in Memphis, Tennessee. And so all I knew was ministry, ministry, ministry my whole life. So when I began to get into these mentorship environments where these women were entrepreneurs, I was like, this is interesting. And so I was doing virtual assistance, social media management. I was anything that involved administration, I had my hands in it. And eventually I went back to work and I started doing customer service management for a Christian marketing agency. And
Mm.
yes, it was so good. It was so good. We supported the behind the scene launches of so many great ministry leaders that people know and love. We helped them build their courses and launch their platforms out. And I was behind the scenes doing the customer service management because I like serving the people. And I want to say in 2021, 2022, they had to lay off the entire staff.
Oh.
Yes. And I had just had my son maybe 6, 7 months prior to that. And I was like, and we just ended the pandemic, right? And they laid off the entire staff. And before the layoff, I had a dream that the company and the CEO, that the finances weren't where they needed to be. And I was telling my husband, I was like, yeah, I had this dream. It was so interesting because it was the exact people. And I never assumed that my dreams, the people that are in them, are the people that it's referring to. But I told my husband a dream. And so when we got the call that they were laying off everyone, I actually was like on the inside laughing because everyone was kind of crying and terrified. But I was just like, the peace of God just overcame me in a hard situation. And I'm just like, oh, thank you, Lord, for revealing this to me early because my heart was prepared for it. And I would say that layoff literally propelled me full time into entrepreneurship. So since then, I've been full time in my business, serving ministry leaders, nonprofit organizations, online service providers, and consultants get their businesses in order. And I specialize in helping them lay a proper foundation. So
Mm.
as they're building and growing, they're sustaining the work that they're doing and they can make greater impact. And that's a long overview of how I got to where I am now.
Wow. Ebony, there is so much there. The double mastered special education, ministry, the discovery of your gift of administration, working with nonprofits, and then even just the building of exposure to different types of ways to help and support people, customer service management, and then just I love just being led by the Spirit. You had the dream that I won't get into this on this show, but that's actually, I've had a couple of reasons why I started down this path, and a dream was one of them. So I know that feeling, and that when the Lord shows you something. But one of the things that really sticks out to me, Ebony, is just the connectivity of how when you were in one sense and then learning, discovering a gift. I feel like a lot of times, Ebony, when people are in process, they don't always see how everything comes together. And sometimes that can lead to discouragement, or it leads to this, I'm just going to go make it happen now that I think I see everything that's happening. So, how did you maintain a focus and a reverence for God in the process? Because I've seen those two paths. Either you get really excited and you go all the way down because I saw these two things happen, I'm going to go for it. At versus the I'm not sure and I'm afraid. And how did you balance that? Because there was a lot of steps in between on your journey.
Yes, I like to say that I was fortunate to be put in an environment. So once I graduated college, I was heavily in ministry to the point that my first official career job out of college, I was working at Emory Autism Center. And I remember that the church, they were about to do a tour to go to all of the HBCUs in the country to pray. We were praying for the ending of abortion and all of these things. And I was like, oh, I have to be a part of this. And I remember you're young, you're fresh out of college, like you're very zealous. And I was like, oh, I'm about to quit my job. I was paying my own car note, my rent for my apartment, but I was like, I'm gonna step out on faith. I'm about to quit this job because I have to be in this moment. I have to travel and put my feet on these HBCU campuses to pray with the believers that I was growing up with in ministry. And I remember texting all of my family members in a group text, and I was like, hey, I feel like the Lord is calling me to quit my job. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this new car note or my rent, but I know the Lord will make it happen. And I remember my family was like, what? What are you doing? But I was just in that season, I was so much filled with faith because that was all I was around.
Mm.
I was at the church all the time, right? I was executive assistant, so I was always inside of church. And then the church had a ministry school. I ended up doing that once I quit my job. So I was there every day. So I was just in an environment where I was literally consumed with the word, right?
Mm.
And I think it was because of me being in the right place at the right time that I was able to make decisions out of faith and not fear. I was able to just be grounded in where the Lord was taking me, even when I didn't know where all the pieces were going to fit in, even though I didn't know what the future would hold. At that moment, I was like, I trust God. I trust
Mm.
God, and that's all that mattered in that time. I was so dependent upon Him that either it was gonna work out or it was gonna work out, and that's literally the place that I was in, just full of faith, full of hope, full of dependency on God, and so all of my decisions were made from that place. Even to me marrying my husband, it was literally God. When we first started building our family, it was God. When we transitioned from Atlanta to back to Memphis with my family, it was God. And then when we went back to Atlanta for
Mm.
ministry, it was God. So all along the way, I really believe that being in the right environment around the right people and then having your faith in nothing but him and knowing that he is literally my livelihood. He is going to sustain me. He's going to provide for me no matter what it looked like. And then also understanding that this process, this journey with him is not peaches and cream, that there's
Mm.
going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but that's going to be the thing that produce perseverance. That's going to be the thing that increases my faith. That's going to be the thing that if I endure, it's all going to work out in the end. And so, yeah, that's how I was able to keep going and do all of these things, even without having the step by step play in mind.
Wow, Ebony, that will definitely preach. Right place, right environment, right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how old you are, Ebony. I'm respectful. I won't ask a lady. But there's this sense of speed in the days that we live in. Everybody wants it harder, better, faster,
Mm-hmm.
stronger. So timing, you've got the calendar time and then the unique to the Chronos time and the Kairos time. At least I was picking that up from what you were saying. Right place, right time, dependent on God. That you can. Take, you could write that down, put it on a poster. Folks, he did, the Ebony is dropping some gold. I just wanted to put that in there that sometimes when you're sharing nuggets like that, some people they miss them. No, you need to go back and listen to what Ebony is saying.
Yes.
So, Ebony, customer service management. You're started. I love what you said. You're working with people, you build the foundation, and then you have the actual agency. How did you come up with the name and even just all the different, the way different services come together? Because sometimes in business, people don't understand the type of systems that you need. And so, talk about the forming of the business and how do you bring these skill sets together so that people have the right systems to run their organization?
Yeah, so that's I love that question. I actually had a Christian mentor. And I remember when I was forming, I had already been doing all of these services for virtual assistant, social media management, customer service. I had already been doing these things. But once I got this Christian mentor, I was like, I think I'm going to actually go all in with this business. This is while I was still doing customer service management, working a 9 to 5. And she was every time I worked with her, when there was a decision that had to be made, she always told me, she said, okay, we're going to give you 3 days in prayer, 3 days in prayer and fasting, because we're not just going to come up with any name. Like the Lord is going to reveal it to us. And so I was like, okay. So 3 days praying, fasting about the name. And during that time, I just kept hearing like the domino effect. And I'm thinking from a service lens of with the domino effect, once that one piece roll over, it literally impacts all of the other pieces. And so I was like, I came back to it and I was like, the it's gonna be something along the lines of the domino effect. And I was like,
Mm.
and we were trying to figure out, was it gonna be like super spiritual and be like the kingdom effect and all of the things. So we started like brainstorming like other words so we wouldn't make it like super religious and things of that nature. Because me, I'm like, oh, I serve kingdom people. And so we came up with empire, right? And so that's how the empire effect came about, really through prayer and fasting and
Mm.
this vision of these dominoes. And I was thinking, like, oh, I am going to be that first domino. And with any business or organization or CEO that I support, once I support them and help them lay the proper foundation in their business, and once I work with them because I understand who's and who I am, and I understand the favor that's on my life, once I work with their business, they're going to be able to serve so many more people. So that's why I also say I help people amplify their impact because I'm always thinking about those dominoes tipping over. Because if I can support you in building a sustainable business because you've laid a proper foundation, then I know that the mission that you have is going to also impact more people, whether that's communities, whether that's your audience you serve, whether that's global impact, whatever it is that your mission is, I'm going to support you in making greater impact in that mission, which is why you also have to be very earning in marketplace ministry.
Mm.
Because when you know that you're coming in to support a mission, you want to make sure that the mission that you're supporting, the reach that you're amplifying, is for his kingdom, right?
Mm.
For his glory and things of that nature. Yeah, that's how the Empire Effect Agency came about.
Oh, that is so awesome. I love that. And even just the rhythm of fasting and prayer. And a lot of times we talk about that in the church context, but not just as a life rhythm, especially as it pertains to our work,
Mhm.
business purpose and calling. So I thank you for highlighting that. Ebony, the your process when you come into a business, how do you evaluate what somebody needs? Is that more of like an intake? Is that a conversation? Because I'm sure different people need different things, right? Sometimes maybe someone comes to Ebony and they're like, I'm trying to do this for my social media, or I feel like I run my business decently well, but I'm not organized. How do you kind of come in and assess what a client needs?
Yeah, so for every client, I start with an alignment call.
Hmm.
So that's me learning about who they are, who they serve, and then I let them identify what their problems are and what they think they need support with. And so on that alignment call, I'm just making sure they're a good fit for me, I'm a good fit for them. And from there, I usually do an operations audit. And so that's where I'm going into their business and I'm looking at how they steward their people or people management. I'm looking at how they steward their time. So when I'm managing CEOs, I'm the gatekeeper of their time, right? And so I'm going in and I'm looking at how are they stewarding their time? What does their calendar look like? And then I'm also looking at just the systems and the processes and workflows. Are they documented? Are they in place? Or is it living inside of the CEO's head? I've just been in so many businesses where the focus is the branding or the focus is the marketing. And then when you get on the behind the scenes of these companies, it's just nothing that's in place. So if you think about going into a house, right? And you're thinking about a foundation, if you can go into a house and it looks pretty on the outside, but then when you start noticing, like, oh, there's cracks here, there's gaps that weren't filled in the development of this home, there's a column missing. So you start to notice all of these things that they skipped over because they were focusing on the design, because people are focused on the curb appeal. That's how you first determine if you like a house from which on the outside. And so I see, when I've worked with so many people, I've seen how easy it is for people to focus on what it looked like on the outside, how
Mm-hmm.
they show up on social media. And I go into them, to these different organizations, and I begin to look at the foundation. I begin to identify the gaps, the inefficiencies, and then I come in and I create a plan on what we're going to focus on. And while we're doing it, we'll still support them in the things that they want to prioritize and things of that nature. But I'm always emphasizing to my clients or people who like to work with me, I know those are the gaps that you see, but we're going to also focus on these things, because if we don't get these things together, you can generate 100 leads a month
Mm-hmm.
and bring on all of these clients, but it won't matter, because as you continue to grow and scale your business, eventually you will burn out. And during 2020, we saw so many entrepreneurs who were already online showing up, their businesses started to take off. And then around 2023, 2024, a lot of them began to pivot out of the online space back into their 9 to 5s, back into a career. And then for those who did share out, hey, I'm going silent or I'm pivoting, a lot of the things, the recurring themes that showed up was burnout, was
Mm-hmm.
I didn't focus on my operations. So we think we can skip the foundation to build this pretty house, this pretty business, and on the outside looking in, it's like, man, this person is successful. They're growing. But we don't understand the mental toll that comes with you not having a proper foundation. I love to tell this story or share this story about Jethro and Moses in Exodus 18. And
Mm-hmm.
Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, he saw that Moses was doing good. And so he was sending Moses' wife back. And as he was like observing all of the things that Moses was doing, he already saw that Moses was doing a good thing. But he looked at Moses one day and he told him, he said, the thing that you're doing is not good. Even though in the beginning of Exodus 18, the reason why he brought his wife back because he saw that Moses was doing good. But he said, when he was able to see the process, the day to day,
Mm-hmm.
okay, he said, the thing that you're doing is not good. And if you continue to do it in this way, you and the people will wear yourselves out.
Yeah.
Because at this time Moses was the only one, he was considering all of the matters, right? So everyone every day would come and they would line up to Moses and share their issues, and Moses would basically talk about what was going to happen. And they were lining up every single day, and he was doing this from morning to evening. And so Jethro told him this, and then Jethro gave him a strategy, and he told him, he said, this is what you need to do. You need to delegate. He said, you need to find the right people and put them in place. And he was like, there's going to be some who's going to judge hundreds, and there's going to be some who's going to judge tens, and there's going to be some who do one. But you need to find the right people to delegate to, so
Mhm.
that not only will you not burn out, but the people who you are called to reach will also not burn out. And this is all in Exodus 18. I love this story because it talks about the power of delegation in business, and how on the outside, when you're looking in, you might see success, growth, goodness. Wow, this person is doing so good. But once you get closer, so once Jethro was able to see the day to day, which is what I go in and I'm supporting with the operations, the day to day of the business, and you begin to notice all of the things, the processes, the workflows, how things are being done, then you get to notice, okay, you're actually doing a great thing, but if you keep doing it in this way, you're going to burn yourself out. And so that's what we saw a lot of entrepreneurs doing. They ended up burning out. They ended up, when it came to their mental health, things just started getting rocky. But I noticed that a lot of them were saying, oh, I need to go back to my operations. I need to go back and build the foundation because I skipped that part.
Mm.
And so that's what I do when I go into businesses. I make sure that they don't skip that part, so that when they reach the millions, when they begin to bring in that overflow of clients or customers, they're able to sustain that in which they built.
I love the Exodus 18 call out with Moses and Jethro. It's a
Mhm,
masterclass delegation. And when we're talking about just the integration of faith and work, it's text like that
mhm,
highlight different principles in
mhm,
scripture. So I love you calling that out. And I also, which is really good, there's the delegation, but I like how you talked about earlier in the chapter, he was actually doing well. And
mhm,
so, even just with your view of how you come in and help a business, there's kind of another lesson there about how somebody could already be doing something well, and that third party can still see something else and go, hey, you've been doing well, and I see this. We even see Jesus do the same thing in the book of Revelation with the
mhm,
letters to the churches. Hey, you've been doing well. Here's
mhm,
the one thing I see you doing, though. You even see Jesus do that. See,
mhm.
now we're preaching, Ebony. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Get me excited. Yeah, Ebony, I can't help but take the conversation in this direction. We're in the age of AI. Here comes Chat GPT, Claude, Perplexity, all of these things. Have you or are you incorporating AI into what you do? What is your take? Because I'm seeing kind of two camps, Ebony. I see the people who are like, okay, this is a new tool. Let's jump in. And then you see the other side of the house, the fear and the fear
Mhm,
mongering and all the movies. Skynet is coming, like Terminator. So as somebody that is helping people and businesses build their foundation and prepare to scale, do things with excellence. I'm reminded of the book, The E Myth. Don't just work in your business, work on your
mhm.
business. How are you using AI? Where do you see things going in business? And how will you support them in that transition? Not because AI is here and it's not going anywhere.
Yes, so I use AI every day in my business. And so I get it. I work with a lot of women who are old school, but then I also work with the businesses that are like newer and they're willing to try anything. And so I have clients who aren't necessarily utilizing AI, but I'm always thinking, so I'm 35. And I started to grow up when we didn't have cell phones and things of that nature. We didn't have iPads, and we had the dial-up computers. So I'm not that old, but I remember dial-up computers. And I remember like when social media became a thing, people were skeptical about social media. When you look back on the different things that have launched and have taken off and that are still here today, when you see new waves come, you can do two things. You can be the first in your industry to tap in, or you could get left behind, right? And so I know there's thriving businesses who may not utilize or trust AI, but the ones that take off in the season are the ones who are willing to try it. And so for me, I think about like having faith in business, having faith in this. I'm going to try it, right? And so every day I'm utilizing AI in my business. I'm implementing AI in my clients' businesses because I'm all about efficiency, right? I'm helping my clients get back their time. I'm helping them scale their impact. I'm helping them increase their revenue. And the way in which they're going to do it in this time and season, we have to be able to discern the time and the season. And in this season, AI is the thing that is taking businesses to the next level, whether you like it or not. And so with my clients, I'm using it. It's their thought partner. It's going to help them organize their back end. And then I always use a disclaimer and a caveat because I do notice that there's gaps even in AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I also noticed that a lot of people were using it to replace the Holy Spirit because you have something that you can go and ask the question to and it gives you an answer. And so if you're not careful, what will happen is you'll begin to replace the Holy Spirit's role and you will go and ask AI about it. Right.
Mm,
And so it's replacing the place of prayer and fasting because why would you need to pray or fast about it when you can just ask AI, what do you think about this? Hey, chat, what do you think about this? And so there is this level of, for specifically for Christians, where you can make AI your God, right?
it's
And
good.
it shouldn't replace Holy Spirit in your life. And so there is a, not necessarily a balance, but there is this kind of, I don't know, I can't think of a word for it, but let's just use balance for just not having the better word. There's this balance that you have to have with the use of AI so that you're not on that end where it's like your decision maker. It can
Mm-hmm.
help you make a decision, it can help compare your options for you, it can use data from the different sources to support your decision making. But for my case, I'm using it to help my clients to make some of their behind the scenes. I'm using it to help them organize their back ends, to help them develop out their systems and processes and workflow in a more efficient way. Right. And so I definitely am on the wagon of AI because I've seen it work in my business. I've seen it work in my clients' business for those of them who use it.
Ebony, you got me thinking all techie now with all the different agents and LLMs, but I think
Mhm.
it's a great call out too. You said a few key things. One, and maybe the word balance is good because it's getting more efficient and it's only going to get even more than what it is now. And so I think, like you said, balance is right. It doesn't replace our personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And the original, one of the roles of the Holy Spirit is being our helper. In the Greek, the paraclete, the one that comes alongside. And so even though you have this tool that can help do a lot of different things, you're right, having an over reliance on it can be dangerous. And I think kind of in the background, I heard you saying too, it's gonna, I think as we get in the future, there'll be more about use cases. Okay, just because it can do something doesn't mean I should. And I think that will kind of be a question that gets put on the table as the days, months, and years go on. Okay, it can do this. Should I do it? Because it'll just, I'm reminded of in the book of Daniel, it talks about how knowledge will increase. And the AI is certainly adds to that, the times we're living in. So thank you for highlighting and you've been saying this in your entire journey, being dependent on God, especially in an age of a huge technological innovation and revolution that's going on. My goodness, Ebony.
Yeah.
Before we go, Ebony, what are you excited about? Because at the time of this recording, I know it's a little earlier, but when you think about the back half of the year, what are you excited about in the kind of the second half of 2026?
That's a good question. What am I excited about? I'm excited for believers to arise as leaders in their industry. And I say that because with the use of AI and with all of the knowledge that's out there, I believe that there is a generation, a remnant of people who the Lord is showing even right now the importance of marketplace ministry. Even as I'm going on my own journey of, wow, marketplace, because me and my husband were heavily into ministry. He's a leader in the church and things of that nature. But more and more, I'm seeing like this need for marketplace ministry as
Hmm.
people are no longer coming to the church. When I was in the classroom, I had a student and she was like, Miss James, why are you always going to church? And like they would ask me things like, Miss James, why don't you trust? And why don't you do this? And why don't you do this? And I would always explain it to them. And they would be like, my grandma go to church, but she cuss. And like it was these
Mm.
things that like, cause children, they'll tell you some things and you get all these insights. And I just remember like being in that environment to set the tone. And I'm just like there's a group of uncompromised Christians
Yeah.
who the Lord wants to raise up in marketplace because that's where the people are, right? If you're thinking about most people, they're trying to survive, they're trying to figure out how to make money. And I think as Christians, especially those of us who grew up in ministry, who are heavily into ministry, I think if we're not focused on becoming leaders in our industries in the marketplace, we're going to miss out on a group of people who don't believe that Christians can be rich, right? Or who haven't seen it, right? And so I believe that the Lord wants to raise up his people in the marketplace to dominate in their industries. And I'm excited for what that's going to look as people are growing more knowledge, as they're able to now utilize AI, even if they don't have the resources to grow their teams. Now you, like you said, you have your AI agents that who can come along you and support you. So there's resources that are available through the use of AI that can support the growth of businesses, of kingdom businesses. And I'm excited for what that's going to look like in 2026 and beyond. And so that's one of the things I'm excited about.
I love it. I love it. Ebony, and what you just shared, I was reminded of, I recently heard, what's her name? Cheryl Bachelder. She's the former CEO of Popeyes. And she was saying she was talking with I don't know if it was a professor at a Christian university. And she said this, and what you just said reminded me of that. It was a quote, I think, from a professor. Increasingly, business leaders may be the stewards of civilization. And where the professor was going, and I'm not saying again, it's not scripture, so you can always pick apart what people say. The point that he was making is you see other spheres of influence eroding at times. You've seen it in education. You've seen, unfortunately, the way the enemy attacks the family. But the one place that everybody has to go to make money and even to be able to set up a situation like a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad, somebody's got to economically make impact in the business world. So when you think about it, God moving in business many years ago, the late Billy Graham even said, I believe the next major move of God will be in the marketplace. And so I think what you're saying is very critical because someone may not ever set foot in the church, but maybe them observing you, habits, discipline, excellence in the context of the workplace, that may be how somebody comes to know Jesus because they saw you as an entrepreneur, they saw you in corporate. And so what you're saying, that's nothing small. That is huge. And you just reminded me of that nugget that I heard at a conference. Yeah, folks, in the business world, everybody's got to go to work. It's the one place, believer or unbeliever, everybody's there. So it's not just about what we do on Sunday, it's about what we do Monday through Saturday. So, Ebony, thank you
Yeah.
for highlighting that aspect and talking about your excitement there.
Yes. Can I add one point to
Yeah,
that?
for sure. For sure.
I would say too, because I believe that there's already believers in their industries, right? But I think as we continue to move through 2026 and beyond, I believe that those who have, I think that there's going to be a embolden, I don't know if that's a word,
Mhm.
where those who have been in their jobs, but maybe people don't know that they're a Christian, right? They've been silent. they've been just don't know how to navigate being a Christian in a 9 to 5, been in education, like we weren't allowed to do certain things. But I think there's going to be an increase of believers who are bold in their space
Mhm.
as well. And so anyone who's listening, who that may be them, right? They're in their careers, they're in their 9 to 5s, they're working in the school system. I just encourage them to go all in for Christ, to be bold, no matter what that looks like, no matter what the pushback will be. It's your lifestyle can preach better than you can, you know what I'm saying? Beat scriptures over people's heads. Again, when I was in the classroom, I never had to, like, hey, y'all want to know about Jesus? I never had to ask that question to my students. But on my lunch breaks, on the times where I had to myself or doing transitions, my Bible was always on my desk. So when the students asked about it, it's an open door. Now I have
Mhm.
the freedom to say and do whatever I wanted to do. Outside of the classroom, if my students wanted to come to church with me, I'm picking them up. So I would take my students to church all the time on the weekends. If their parents were okay with it, I'm like, hey, let's go. I'm picking you up on Sunday morning. We're going to eat afterwards, and then I'm going to take you back home. So I had my students in church with me on the weekends. And I think sometimes we don't know how to navigate certain spaces because we don't think we can do certain things. But my students, that my lifestyle, as I mentioned, with not using foul language, I would tell my students, hey, if you never hear me use it, you can't use it in my classroom. And even though that was different from what they experienced at home, in my classroom, a student who would come in using that type of a language, by the end of the year, they already knew. The students didn't, I didn't have to say anything because the students, oh, you don't talk like that in Miss James' classroom. But
Mhm.
I never had to put that on the wall or make it a rule that I announced. It was a lifestyle that I lived. And then just having the boldness. I remember not too long ago, I had a client. I'm in their back end so I can see their emails and things of that nature. And this client had ordered something. And I could have stayed silent, act like I didn't see it. But I was just like, I literally, in our next call, I confronted her about it. And I was like, hey, I noticed an order that you made and it kind of gives witchcraft vibes. And I
Mhm.
asked her, and I was like, are you a witch? I said, because if so, we're going to go ahead and end this partnership because I don't partner with witches and I don't support the business of witches. I said, we Jesus girlies over here. And if that's not something that you're into, let's go ahead and sever this relationship. I talk about alignment a lot because I truly believe the more you're aligned with his plans and the things that he wants you to do, the easier it is for you to grow and scale in the marketplace. And I remember we had this whole conversation. She was like, no, someone recommended that I buy this particular product. And so I bought it, but I didn't pay attention to what all was in it. And so, yeah, we had a conversation. Then now this same client, she's sending me scriptures like, hey, look at this scripture I'm reading. And I went to church and this is what they talked about. And I'm just like, all I had to do was be bold
Mhm.
enough to say, hey, what's going on here? Versus stay silent about it and act like I didn't see it because this is my highest paying client.
Yeah.
It's a matter of not being compromised in the marketplace, not being silent, and still being able to stand on your biblical foundation and principles while you're doing the work that God called you to do. You're at the right place at the right time, but you also have a responsibility to let your life preach, right?
Mhm.
You have a responsibility to go into all of the world, right? And make disciples in whatever way that looks like for you in your business. And so I definitely want to add that in there.
No, thank you for that, Ebony, and what a great call out too, because sometimes it just takes a powerful question or inquiry like, "Hey, not really sure about that." And so, like you said, with witchcraft, there's too much syncretism going on, and folks, that just means mixture, Jesus plus, and it's like, but sometimes people have to, it's like you have to point things out to them. So that's just the example that Ebony gave. But yeah, maybe it's just asking, being bold and asking a question. Maybe you serve on the board of executives Maybe you're the CEO. Maybe you're adjacent to those roles, like a Joseph or an Esther or a Daniel. Integrity matters. So, Ebony, see, I got to bring Ebony back because she's going to have me going in five different
Let's
directions. We're going
do
to have to do
it.
a part two at some point. Ebony, like the Avengers movies, Ebony James will return to the Fortified Life podcast. Ebony, you got us hanging on the edge of our seat. How can people find you? Social media, website? How can people keep up with all the wonderful work that you're doing or become a client?
Yes, so I am active on LinkedIn. So you can definitely find me Ebony D. James on LinkedIn. And then also my website is www.theempireeffectagency.com. And so if you're looking to be a client, you can go on my website and book an alignment call. And that's where I'll learn more about your business, tell you a little bit more about the work that I do, and we'll align on if I can support you or not.
I love it. Folks, you heard it from her herself. You know where to find Ebony James. Ebony, I can't thank you enough for hanging out with us here on the Fortified Life. Shout out to Nautry Jones for the introduction.
Yes.
That's another good episode you need to go back and watch. But thanks so much for coming on the show, Ebony.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to part two.
Absolutely. Folks, that's all we have time for here on the Fortified Life podcast. You know how we end things. Don't compartmentalize your faith in the marketplace. And from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. For our YouTube audience, please support the channel. Subscribe to the Fortified Life podcast at the Fortified Life, or you can on your podcast platform of choice, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, search the Fortified Life and subscribe. Wherever you look for us, you will find it. But we'll see you next time on the Fortified Life podcast.